As soybean harvest nears in Nebraska, this week we talked with Nebraska Extension's Nathan Mueller to learn how farmers can maximize this year's crop. As Nathan says, the optimum moisture for combining soybeans is 13%, but it's undoubtedly not easy to get all your beans out at that level. Nathan says one thing that could help is selecting varieties to give you harvest windows. UNL survey results indicate different maturities can yield equally well, meaning planting dates are important. We talked with Nathan at the Eastern Nebraska Research and Extension Center near Meade Tuesday and began by asking how quickly soybeans can dry down in the field.
Yeah, I mean, we've had years like October 12th back in 2015 in this area where we had a hot 94-degree day and we went from 13% down to 10% in one day. So sometimes Mother Nature fights against us in trying to get that optimal moisture so we're not losing water weight at the elevator, because you could be talking a 70 bushel crop at 13% is really a 67 bushel crop at 9%. So that's, at current market value, that's $28 an acre loss just in water weight. And that's something we want to try to maximize that moisture, get as close to 13% as we can.
You say that one of the things to do to manage harvest is to select varieties, and obviously that starts at the beginning of the season. Tell me how you can do that.
Yeah, so managing moisture now, there's some things we can do, but that process really started a year ago. So producers can really start now planning for next year. One is looking at the varieties. We know from First Trials, which is a third-party entity that's tested in eastern Nebraska. We've looked at that data over the last 5 years, and in northeast Nebraska, for example, we can plant a 2.6 all the way to 3.4, and maturity is not explaining the yield variation. So it's really just about picking the best performing variety. But knowing that then means we can plant a 2.6 or a 2.7 and a 3.4, and we can roughly, you get a day later to harvest, which each 0.1 relative maturity less. So if you go from a 2.5 to a 3.5, that's 10 days later. And spreading out or having that opportunity is the only way you're really going to have a chance to get more of your acres harvested at 13%.
So would you recommend farmers do things specifically next year?
I think so. I think, in the farm economy now, making an extra $10 an acre can make the difference between making money on your acres versus losing money. And so anything we can try to do to capture some extra profit, I think is going to be worth their time and effort.
How can UNL soy water help farmers tell around this time what fields might be ready earlier than others? Yeah, so one thing that the producers can do now is look back at their planting dates and their varieties, and there's a phenology model or a crop development model, kind of like hybrid maize, that they could plug in their date, their planting date, their variety, and it would tell them when are these fields going to reach R8 or maturity, and then they could get a ranking already now. So on a rainy day between now and harvest, if we have one, you could really rank your fields where they're likely going to be in harvest order, and that will really help you prioritize, what fields to start on and end on. How much can moisture change during the day? We talked about, from one day to the next, but during the day, how much can it change? Yeah,
you could change 2% moisture just from the morning to later in the day, but then you can pick it back up in the evening. So you can try to adjust harvest a little bit to capture that, but at the same time, you don't want to miss out on some hours of harvest because you got corn to get to as well.
Any specific tips on trying to minimize loss during harvest?
Your reel speed, matching your reel speed with your drive speed, your travel speed is one. The direction you harvest, even though a lot of times farmers can go out an angle trying to maximize that we don't have beans essentially flying up and hitting the glass in front of you. So there are some things they can do. Most farmers are pretty familiar with making those adjustments, but those do add up. And it's just not the moisture. As we get drier beans and we get some wetting and drying events over harvest, we can start to get some shattering in parts of the state. And so it's not just the 3 bushels that we talked about, but it could be 6 or 7 if you're going from 13% to those 8 or 9.
Finally, there's more interest, I think, now in cover crops than ever before. If you're trying to get a cover crop in after harvest, any recommendations?
Yeah, I actually presented that data on the First Trials, looking at, can we change our variety selection to help? And so, we can really pick up 10 days difference between planting date. Just the difference between May 1st and May 15th, we can get about 5 to 8 days earlier harvest with planting, but then you add the variety, which could be up to 10 days. Getting 2 weeks earlier harvest on soybeans, 2 weeks of cover crop growth in September, October is probably worth a whole month of growth in November, December. So it makes a big difference if you're trying to especially grow cover crops for forage, for livestock. It's going to make a huge difference.